The silence in the room was not peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, and louder than any scream Arthur had ever heard. The caseworker, Mrs. Higgins, tapped her pen impatiently against her clipboard, looking from the scuffed linoleum floor to the small, trembling boy huddled in the corner of the office. He looked like a gust of wind could knock him over, his skin pale and translucent, his eyes vast pools of darkness that had seen too much and spoken too little. "You have to understand, Mr. Vance," the caseworker said, her voice tinged with a weary skepticism that grated on Arthur's nerves. "Leo isn't just quiet. He is selectively mute. He hasn't spoken a single word in 3 years. Not when he's hungry, not when he's hurt, and certainly not to strangers. He's been returned to the system 4 times. People want a child who calls them daddy, not a ghost who haunts their hallways." Arthur looked at his own calloused hands, stained with the grease and dirt of the construction site, and then looked back at the boy. He didn't see a ghost. He saw a mirror of his own shattered heart. "I'll take him," Arthur said, his voice rough but steady. "I don't need him to talk. I just need him to know he doesn't have to be alone anymore. If this story of compassion and second chances touches your heart, please take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you love. Let's spread the message that every child deserves a home, no matter their scars." Bringing Leo home to the small, drafty house on Elm Street was not the fairy tale ending that movies promised. It was the beginning of a long, quiet war against trauma. Arthur Vance was not a rich man. In fact, he was barely keeping the lights on. Since his wife, Sarah, had passed away 2 years prior, the house had fallen into a state of bachelor neglect, a pile of unwashed dishes here, a stack of unpaid bills there. But Arthur had cleaned it for Leo. He had scrubbed the floors until his knees ached and bought a second-hand bedspread with spaceships on it, hoping it would spark some light in the boy's eyes. When they walked to the front door, Leo stood frozen on the threshold, clutching a ragged gray stuffed rabbit that looked as tired as he was. Arthur knelt, ignoring the creak in his knees. "This is your home now, Leo," he whispered, trying to make his deep, gravelly voice sound soft. "You don't have to say anything. You just have to live here. That's your only job." Leo didn't nod. He didn't smile. He simply walked past Arthur, found the corner of the living room furthest from the windows, and sat down, pulling his knees to his chest. That was where he stayed for the first week, a silent statue in a house that was already too quiet. The months that followed were a test of endurance that Arthur had not anticipated. Being a single father was hard. Being a poor single father to a traumatized child was an agonizing isolation. Arthur worked double shifts at the construction site, hauling lumber and pouring concrete until his muscles screamed, just to afford the extra groceries and the therapy sessions that the state subsidy didn't fully cover. Every evening he would come home exhausted, covered in dust, hoping for a greeting, a sound, anything. But he was always met with the same silence. Leo existed in the house like a shadow. He ate the food Arthur cooked, he bathed when told, and he went to school, where the teachers reported that he was well-behaved but entirely absent. He watched Arthur with wide, unreadable eyes, tracking his movements, waiting for the inevitable moment when this man, like the others, would give up and send him back. Arthur could feel that expectation hanging in the air, a thick tension that made the simple act of breathing difficult. Autumn bled into a harsh, gray winter, and the financial noose around Arthur's neck began to tighten. The construction work slowed down as the ground froze, and the heating bill for the old, uninsulated house skyrocketed. There were nights when Arthur skipped dinner, pretending he had eaten a big lunch, just so there would be enough stew for Leo. He would sit at the small, scratched kitchen table, sipping hot water, watching Leo eat in silence. "Ideally, we'd have steak, right, kid?" Arthur would joke, the laughter sounding hollow in the empty room. "But hey, potatoes stick to your ribs." Leo would just look at him, chew slowly, and look away. It was crushing. Arthur began to doubt himself. He lay awake at night, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, wondering if he was doing more harm than good. Maybe the caseworker was right. Maybe Leo needed professionals, not a broke mechanic with a broken heart. Maybe love wasn't enough when you couldn't even afford a new winter coat. The cruelty of the outside world didn't help. One afternoon, Arthur picked Leo up from school and found him sitting on a bench while other children played in the snow. A group of parents stood nearby, their breath pluming in the cold air. Arthur heard the whispers before they saw him. "That's the mute one," a woman in an expensive coat murmured. "It's creepy. My son says he just stares. I heard the dad is barely making rent." Why would they give a kid like that to a man who can't even take care of himself? Arthur felt a surge of rage, hot and blinding. But he swallowed it down. He walked over, wrapped a scarf tighter around Leo's neck, and took his small, cold hand. "Ready to go, buddy?" he asked. Leo didn't squeeze back, but he didn't pull away either. As they walked to Arthur's rusted pickup truck, Arthur squeezed the small hand gently. "Don't listen to them, Leo," he said, his voice fierce. "They don't know us. We're a team. The Vance is against the world." For a second, just a split second, Arthur thought he felt a tiny twitch in Leo's fingers, a microscopic response. It was the only fuel Arthur had to keep going. December arrived with a vengeance, burying the town in 3 feet of snow and burying Arthur in despair. The truck needed a new transmission, wiping out the small savings Arthur had scraped together for Christmas. He had wanted to buy Leo a bicycle, a red one like he had seen Leo eyeing in the store window. He wanted to prove that Santa hadn't forgotten him, that he was a normal boy who deserved normal joys. But the bank account balance was a singular, mocking digit. Christmas Eve dawned gray and bitter. The house was cold. Arthur kept the thermostat at 60 degrees to save money, wearing 2 sweaters inside. He looked at the scrawny plastic tree in the corner, decorated with homemade paper chains and a few ornaments from Sarah's childhood. There were no piles of wrapped boxes beneath it. There was just one small, crudely wrapped package. Arthur felt like a failure as a man and a father. He had failed to protect Sarah, and now he was failing to provide for Leo. That evening, the atmosphere in the house was heavy with unspoken sorrow. Arthur cooked a simple dinner of grilled cheese and tomato soup, a Christmas feast for the poor. He tried to put on upbeat holiday music, but the cheerfulness of the songs felt like an insult to their reality. After dinner, they sat in the living room. The wind howled outside, rattling the loose window panes. Leo sat on the rug, clutching his gray rabbit, staring at the blinking lights of the tree. Arthur sat in his armchair, his head in his hands, fighting back tears he couldn't afford to shed. He stood up slowly, his joints popping, and retrieved the small package from under the tree. He knelt in front of Leo. "Leo," Arthur said, his voice cracking. I know this isn't much. I wanted to get you that bike. I wanted to get you a mountain of toys. But things have been tough. The work dried up and the truck broke," and he stopped, choking on a sob. He took a breath and held out the gift. "I made this for you. It's not from a store, but it's yours." Leo looked from Arthur's tear-filled eyes to the package. Slowly, with trembling fingers, he took it. He tore the paper carefully, not ripping it like a normal child would, but peeling it back to reveal the object inside. It was a wooden carving. Arthur had spent nights in the cold garage, whittling a block of pine into the shape of a dog, a rough, imperfect, but loving replica of the gray stuffed rabbit Leo carried, but reimagined as a strong guardian dog. It was smooth, sanded to perfection, and stained with a dark varnish Arthur had found in the basement. Leo held the wooden dog in his hands, running his thumb over the carved ears. He stared at it for a long time. The silence stretched, aching and profound. Arthur wiped his eyes, looking away, ashamed of his poverty. "I'm sorry, Leo," Arthur whispered, the dam finally breaking. "I'm sorry I'm not a better dad. I'm sorry I can't give you the voice you lost or the life you deserve. I'm just trying my best." Arthur buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He felt the crushing weight of the year, the grief for his wife, the fear for this boy, the exhaustion of poverty. He felt entirely alone in the cold, dark room. But then he felt a weight on his knee, a small, tentative warmth. Arthur froze. He slowly lowered his hands. Leo was standing there, right in front of him. The boy had abandoned his corner. He had abandoned the safety of distance. His small hand was resting on Arthur's knee, and his dark eyes were no longer vacant. They were swimming with tears, alive with an emotion Arthur hadn't seen before. Leo looked at the wooden dog in one hand, then up at Arthur's devastated face. The boy's throat worked, his jaw clenching as if he were fighting a physical battle against the silence that had imprisoned him for 3 years. He took a shaky breath, his chest heaving. Arthur held his breath, terrified to move, terrified to break the spell. Leo stepped closer, dropping the wooden dog onto the carpet. He reached out with both arms and wrapped them clumsily around Arthur's neck, burying his face in Arthur's rough sweater. It was the first time Leo had initiated a hug. The sensation of the small, frail body pressing against him was overwhelming. Arthur wrapped his massive arms around the boy, holding him tight, rocking him slightly. And then He heard it. It was a sound like rusted hinges forcing open, a voice unused and gravelly. Barely a whisper, but clear as a bell in the silent house. "Dad," Leo rasped, the word foreign on his tongue. Arthur stiffened, his heart hammering against his ribs. Leo pulled back slightly, looking directly into Arthur's eyes, his own tears spilling over. "Dad, don't cry." The world seemed to stop spinning. The wind outside ceased its howling. The cold in the room vanished. Arthur stared at the boy, his mouth opening and closing, unable to comprehend the magnitude of the gift he had just been given. 3 years of silence. 3 years of trauma, broken by a wooden dog and a father's tears. "You spoke," Arthur whispered, his voice trembling. "Leo, you spoke. You, sad," Leo said, the words coming faster now, though still halting. He reached up and touched a tear on Arthur's cheek. "Don't be sad. I like the dog. I like home." Arthur Vance, the man who could carry beams of steel and fix engines with a wrench, completely fell apart. He pulled Leo into his lap, burying his face in the boy's neck. Weeping openly, loudly, joyfully, he cried for Sarah, he cried for the years Leo had lost, and he cried for the miracle of this moment. Leo didn't pull away. He held onto Arthur just as tightly, his small hand patting Arthur's back in a clumsy rhythm of comfort. They sat there for what felt like hours, two broken people fusing into a family on the floor of a drafty living room, illuminated only by the blinking colored lights of a plastic tree. That Christmas Eve, there were no expensive gifts, there was no feast, there was no heat in the radiators, but the house was warmer than it had ever been. Later that night, Arthur tucked Leo into bed. For the first time, Leo didn't turn his back to the door. He lay on his back, clutching the wooden dog against his chest. Arthur stood in the doorway, exhausted but feeling richer than any king. "Good night, Leo," Arthur said softly. Leo looked at him, his eyes heavy with sleep, but clear of the darkness that had haunted them for so long. "Night, Dad," he whispered. The next morning the snow had stopped, and the sun broke through the gray clouds, blindingly bright against the white world. Life didn't magically become easy. The bills were still unpaid, the truck still needed fixing, and Leo still struggled with crowded rooms and loud noises. But the silence was gone. The house was filled with the small, tentative sounds of a child learning to trust again. They faced the winter together, not as a caseworker's assignment and a lonely widower, but as a father and a son. Arthur realized that he hadn't saved Leo. Leo had saved him. He had given him a purpose, a reason to fight, a voice in the quiet. Before we reveal the final emotional moment of their journey, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever received a gift that cost nothing but meant everything? Please tell us your story in the comments below. We read every single one. Years later, when people would ask Arthur Vance about the best Christmas of his life, he would talk about the year he finally paid off the mortgage or the year he bought a brand new truck. He would talk about the year he had $10 in his bank account and a block of wood in his hand. He would talk about the moment the silence broke. He would talk about the night he learned that love isn't about what you can buy, it's about who you are willing to bleed for. He would tell them about the boy who found his voice because he finally found a father who would listen to his silence. If this story brought a tear to your eye or warmth to your heart, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family. Your support helps us tell more stories that matter. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of inspiration. Merry Christmas, and may you find your own miracle this year.